So, right, is it?
A lot.
They can be outstanding. It looks like both. Yes. Looks like both. Yeah, we should you guys have. Right. We got it. We are allowed to. Goes on, whatever. What are the plans? Professional. Got it. Go into the wall. PBIS. And figure it out. Oh, all right.
All right, is that gonna not trip anybody up?
We are live now. Well, I think yeah, they can see it. Check, check, check. Hello, hello, Springfield. Martindale. Hello, Cleveland. This one goes to 11. Feels like it's right.
You guys are on.
Check, check, check. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Amy, Amy, can you hear us? Hello, Amy. Hello, Springfield.
Yeah, Amy can hear Mike, can you test one more?
Test, test, test. Siblings, 1, 2, 1, 2. Sorry, library. Oh, absolutely. We need more cowbell. Shall we start? Okay, we're going to get started. Hello, everybody. Hello, Facebook Live. Hello, Springfield. Hello, Carbondale. Can we get a little whoop whoop for Springfield and Carbondale from our group here? All right. Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm your cruise director today. Now, my name is Mike Kelly. I'm a professor at Loyola at the School of Social Work, along with Allie Hearn and Brian Meyer here from Midwest PBIS. We are so excited to have you joining us virtually in this space. In just a moment, I'm going to give over to 3 amazing school mental health professionals from Freeport, Illinois, who are going to describe to you a project that they've embarked on in the past year, largely based on the needs they saw in their school, combined with ideas and kind of inspirations and challenges they got from last year's Clinician Leadership Forum. I'm just going to speak for just a minute to talk a little bit about the context of why that came about. I mean, these folks are awesome, and they probably could have just gone and done it all themselves, but we asked them to join us because they had been here last year and had learned some things that they wanted to bring back to their schools. And the goal of the Clinician Leadership Forum, which is now in its 3rd year, as you know, is to bring ideas to the surface, get us together with principals. We have a lot of administrators in the room today, which is awesome. And then say, okay, now what can we do around some key areas to bring these things back to our schools, to build the capacity of all the people in our schools, and to hopefully make outcomes better for kids. So one of the things that is exciting about this work is that it's a labor of love, and it's really a culmination of a lot of things that I've been involved in, that West folks are involved in, which is this idea of ongoing, sustained professional learning. So I run a certificate program at Loyola that does that, and a cohort model for 2 years. Before that, and kind of how I came to this work, was I was looking at the idea of professional learning communities. Who's in a professional learning community or has heard of one? They kind of run the gamut from really helpful to not so helpful. The challenge for us was, could we design PLCs that were for school mental health, school clinicians, that really were meaningful, that were sustainable, that were things people would take back to their, back to their buildings and do things with. A lot of why we don't do that is related to just knowledge and skills, but a lot of it is more of, I would say, issues of isolation and burnout, and our need to just put our head down and keep going. So the PLCs for us became a way to create a reflective space to come together like we're doing for these 2 days, and to say, what do we see, what are the needs, what can we do together? So I've been at that for a while, and I won't talk more about that just yet, but certainly anybody who's online who wants to learn more can go find me and find out more about that. But what I am going to talk about now, which is really exciting, is the topic that got these folks going, which is the crisis about crisis. This is a topic that came out of last year's Clinician Leadership Forum. It is, I would argue, a perennial topic. It is one that we will always, I think, be having to continually work at. And what do we mean by that? We mean that at any moment, all the educators and all of the school mental health professionals and educational leaders in this room and seeing us around the world right now, all of you know that there's a school culture that can often be about drop everything, come and fix, come and address, come save, right? We also know there are things that are legitimate crises, that are life-threatening, that are beyond the pale of what teachers know how to do. We're not talking about those things in a sense. In a sense, we are, because we want you to be able to differentiate. What we know that's more serious in some ways is all the other things that get lumped into crisis, right? And we need to have a consistent definition about those. We have to be able to speak in one voice as a faculty leadership team. This is what a crisis looks like. These are things that can be handled in the classroom. These are the things that can be handled by an administrator. These are things a clinician can get involved in. And I think we all did this informally, but because we don't do it formally, we don't do it in a way that we are sustaining, it becomes its own kind of drain on all of us. We're not necessarily meeting the needs of kids that way. We often meet the adult needs because the adults either get to feel needed, or in the case of some teachers, they get to hand off the kid to someone else. We have to think about that, and we have to think about the reality that our caseloads don't allow us to be essentially on call. Some of us have friends who work in medical and healthcare situations or other social work situations, and they wear a pager and they're on call, and that's their job. That's all they do. We kind of do a split the difference, right? Like, we're on call, but we're also expected to do all these other things that are set and are there for us. So we need to think about that. Can we not just say this together and agree today, but can we actually help teachers learn to de-escalate and see their role as being somebody who can do that initial first responder to the less serious crises and get those de-escalated and dealt with. And then we have to really look at how do we create this work in a way that empowers administrators, so that administrators can also themselves get off that treadmill, that crisis treadmill, where they feel reactive, they feel like they're being constantly pulled, that they feel like they have options. So I say all that because here are now several folks, Christine Hodges, Danielle Jackson, Maria Tooten, did I Christine and Danielle are counselors at Freeport, in Freeport at Carl Sandburg School, and Maria is the school social worker. And I'm going to give over to them now, and they're going to talk for a while about their project and what they've done in the last year. I will be back to kind of moderate a panel. We'll be able to get questions from Facebook Live as well as this room. So, Maria.
Okay, Danielle. I'm Danielle Jackson. I am one of the counselors at Carl Sandburg. We are a 5th and 6th grade building, and so I am the 6th grade counselor.
Christine Hodges, and I am the 5th grade counselor. And Maria, the school social worker.
I want to say, first of all, that we are a team. And that's probably been the biggest benefit at our building, is that we work together as a team. And so if you don't have that in your buildings, I would really encourage you to make that the first place you start. Get the clinicians together and try to work together as a team, because it's a lot of work. And when you feel alone or you're not working with a group, it makes it a lot harder. And so I'm going to start with why we chose this focus area. We were sitting in your spots this time last year. We were with our administrators. They were both here, and basically they gave us the permission and the go-ahead to do what we needed to do. And we'll talk about that later, but the administrative buy-in was also a big, huge part of the work that we were able to do. And so basically we were constantly in crisis mode, all day, every day. We were wearing the radios, and so we were constantly feeling like we're on call. We had to stop everything. We, in the middle of a session with a student, had to go and find out what was going on in a classroom. And so we were overwhelmed. We were stressed. This is our pictures up here. We were just really, really struggling daily. And we were trying to meet the needs of all the students, the staff, the parents, just trying to meet all those needs. And so we were in a really, really bad place. And so this came at an excellent time for us to start thinking about next year and how can we save ourselves, because we could not go on at that pace. And we knew, we're from the model that we're supposed to be preventative. We're supposed to be providing services to where we can meet those needs in a more preventative way, but we were always in that reactive mode and always trying to, hopping from one thing to the next. So basically, again, just really, really stressed and trying to figure out how can we make our lives better? How can we make this situation better? The other part was we were not able, even with all the things that we were doing, we still were not meeting the needs of probably the students that needed it most. At one point, we started talking about students that were our internalizers, that we really weren't getting to those needs, but also some of those tier 3 students who really needed our support, but we were focused a lot on the behavior students, the ones that, you hear the most about or you get the most calls about, and trying to figure out how could we service those students differently. So we really love this slide from last year that we learned about. In our training, we're all trained as educators, working with students, what to do if the student is seizing or if they have diabetes. And everyone is taught that training, everyone in the building. And so we took the other approach, that is so important for all of us to know. It's also really important for everyone in the building to know how to address those social emotional needs. And if we take that approach versus just a few experts in the building, think about how much more helpful that could be if all teachers got that same training, what to do with a student who has ADHD, what to do with a student who has anxiety. Some of those basic skills, if they were taught throughout the building, it could make our jobs so much easier. We were hoping, one of the impacts that we wanted to make is that if we focused our strengths at the time in this area, that we could find the time to focus school-wide approaches, that we could find more time to provide PD to staff. We could find more time to get into the classrooms, to talk about careers or some of those other things in the classrooms versus that reactive cycle that we were in. And we also wanted to do more preventative services. And then as we worked our way through the tiers, through MTSS, we wanted to provide services for those tier 3 students, which is what we're taught, time that we should be spending with those kids, that those are our highest needs kids, and that's where we should be putting our focus. We were hoping to reach more students in general, but also those students who really, really needed us. And so what we wanted to say to you guys is, why should you think about doing this? And maybe some of our inspiration, why we chose to really take this on and put it into place this past school year. One, it does make the job more manageable. Now, I can say that also saying that this year has been really, really tough. Just within our school, we've gone through some restructuring. And so we used to be a 5-8 building, and now we're back to 5-6, and we had a combination of teachers coming together, combinations of students coming together. So it's been a really, really tough year, but the things that we put in place definitely have made things more manageable for us. And so that was one of the key things why you should consider this. And I know just going around the room, some of you guys have already started some of this work, but truly it does make a difference, and it does make it easier. One of the other big things that we found out in doing this is that our staff now has a better understanding of when to access a clinician versus when to access maybe a dean or another professional in the building. And so we try to make that really, really clear and give lots of options on other things they could do before accessing us. Also, again, just allows us, based on the American School Counseling Association, the social work practice model, it allows us to do those things that we're supposed to be doing in the schools. And I know that that's a big push now to get us to do some of those things developmentally for the students, more in the classroom, more push-in, more working with teachers versus those one-on-one crisis things that could just really take most of our day. So our calendar here, we already had a question about what the pretzel was all about. We are the Freeport Pretzels, and so that is our mascot. Yes, we're proud.
There's nothing scarier than high sodium content. That's what I learned with pretzels. Just fear the pretzel.
And so we did just an overview of our progress. The pretzel is when we were actively working and implementing things throughout the school. The sun in the summertime is we're off and we're on break. Self-care. And then the stars.
The star was just April. Like last year, we were here at the PLC where we kind of started, like we had some ideas, but we actually had the time to sit down with our admin and actually generate a plan. And then like up to this year, and we kind of have plans beyond that. So those I think are a little like faded out. Like we plan to keep going with this and building on it, but that's just kind of an overview of like where we were and where we've come and where we plan to go from here. And we'll kind of get more into those as we go throughout our presentation.
So we started in August, and we knew it was really, really important that we hit the ground running. We know that once the year starts, you cannot go back and say, this is what we're going to do, or try to put plans in place. And so in August, we really hit the ground running. And we started with some of our SOPs, or standard operating procedures, and that big one was the classroom support. And that's what we gave our teachers and kind of really explained to them, when do you contact a clinician? When do you contact a different type of support? And we had a lot of buy-in from our deans in the building, our administration in the building, as well as even our security monitors in the building, and how we could support our teachers when things, and a lot of times, honestly, it was behavior. A lot of times, some of those things were happening in the classroom, and we clearly defined who to contact and when. And so we came right out with that at the beginning of the year. And then we also did our professional development on the implementation of the zones of regulation, as well as calm corners. And we will go into detail about that in a little bit. But again, these were initiated right away at the beginning of the school year. And then in September, we did, after training the staff, we had our staff to teach our students. And they implemented the zones of regulation as well as the calm corner. Each year we go into classrooms as counselors, and sometimes all three of us will go into the classrooms just to introduce ourselves to the students. We go into each homeroom class and we talk about, a lot of times it's the first time they have experience with a counselor or a social worker. So we talk about how it is we're available to them and how we can help the students. We also talk about confidentiality. And so we did that in September, but we also gave a needs assessment survey. And so each student was able to identify any of the needs that they had. And we'll talk a little bit later about how we took that information and were able to maybe identify some students for groups. And then in October, we administered a universal screener for all of our students. And this was given to our teachers. And we'll go into details about that as well. But again, another way to identify students was the screener that we gave, and that was in October. We also started some 6th grade groups based on that needs assessment survey. And then in the months of November and December, we started some 5th grade small group counseling for students, and these were identified by the screener that we gave. This screener we actually administered in the winter, another one in the spring, and we plan to do one more in the spring. And then in January, we did our winter's screener, which was interesting for us to look at that data and compare the fall to the winter and some of the trends and different things that we found from that screener. You'll see the results of that. And so then February and March, and as you guys know, this is when things start to get kind of hectic in the schools. But in February and March, based on some of the data that we saw the need to pilot some calm classrooms as a whole group intervention. Some of the classrooms were really needed a lot of support. And so we decided, instead of trying to do more groups and service more kids that way, we decided to push into the classrooms. And so that's what we started in February. And then we also continued with some small group counselings for students that were identified by the screener as well. And then here we are, April, May. We're actually adding some more push into the classrooms with calm classroom lessons. And that's going to be in we're going to target some of our 6th grade classrooms and pilot some more of that calm classroom lessons there. And then we plan on giving our spring screener in, we're going to say probably May, to get that last spring screener. And then we're going to do a teacher survey as well to go along with the calm classroom presentations that we piloted. This is a copy of our document that we gave to our teachers and our staff, just really defining the difference between crisis. Like we mentioned earlier, there are definitely specific crisis situations that we want them to continue to let us know about. If a student is talking about hurting themselves or hurting someone else, definitely we wanted them to know you still need to contact us and let us know that information. But over here you can see if it's a lot behavior related, then that's not us. Contact, different type of support person, and then we define what that looks like. And later, I think we may be able to share this with you, but we went into a little bit more details about if it's a behavior concern, maybe having the dean come to the classroom door, the teacher and the student go out and have a conversation until that student's able to go back in, different things like that to address behaviors in the classroom.
You guys know what screener it was would be nice.
Yes, that's coming.
Oh,
Yes, absolutely. So again, this is just a document that we shared with our staff. Along with the SOP for classroom support, again, this is just a link that we had and hopefully we'll be able to share with you where we go into more definitions about the supports for the teachers and different things that they could do, especially when it was more of a behavior concern versus an emergency that they needed to contact us.
And I think it came up here when our administrators were here last year about our principal actually he really got excited about this idea of a push-in support. So instead of coming and like rescue, taking the child out and kind of like taking the child out. It would be someone comes in and pushes into the classroom where the teacher, like she said, could have that conversation, but that really our principal kind of took that and ran with it, and that was part of the push of this document, was really equipping the teacher to kind of repair the relationship with the student so they could go back into the room together and continue their work, versus kind of separating them and creating like more of a divide. So that was great that our principal kind of took that on and really pushed it and continued to remind staff of that option and the process throughout the year.
And I think, like the staff member over here said earlier, it's a great idea. We need to develop it further, and we've learned by watching some negative things play out that the teachers need a little bit more PD on what that looks like when they take that child for a walk, and how that it should be a reparative, not a nag session. And so it worked for some, and it kind of like backfired for a few others. So I mean, that's definitely an area we've reflected on, that we need to give a little more PD about what the purpose of us pushing in and you going out with the child. It's not another 5 minutes of nagging them. And then also just the whole deans versus clinicians to protect that therapeutic relationship, because the minute they're called to the counseling office, am I in trouble? All year long, I find myself teaching my office is never for trouble. This is a safe space to support you. And so just really kind of always trying to repeat that we want to protect that therapeutic relationship.
So this is what we talked about earlier, the zones of regulation. This is what we used. First, we did PD with our staff, and then our staff introduced this to our students through 6 modified lessons. But we really, really love this program. We also did a survey with our students that we'll talk about later after implementing this throughout our building.
And I will say, if we didn't even find it, was another school in our district, an elementary school, that had found this New Holstein School District. Literally, if you Google New Holstein, Wisconsin zones, like you'll find the webpage of this school counselor who did some modified lessons and kind of modified it for like whole school, and then kind of even broke it down into like a year, like an implementation over years where it's like introduced like at kindergarten, and then they kind of get the next step up. And so that was kind of neat. Because most of our kids hadn't had it before, it had only been used maybe in the clinician's office, we kind of gave them all 6 up front, but we thought in years to come, we probably wouldn't need to do all 6. So anyway, that's a really good resource, and like I said, just Google it. There's, like, we were able to just take a lot and just modify from there, but we didn't have to start from scratch, which was really great. And then of course, Stones was created by Leah Kuipers, who's an occupational therapist, very user-friendly, easy, kind of materials, and very relatable. So that's, if you don't know about the zones, I'm sure many of you do, but it's really great. So.
Along with the zones of regulation, we instituted calm corners in each and every one of our classrooms. So every classroom has a calm corner. Again, we taught this to our staff, and then our staff implemented this with our students. And so beginning of the year, they talked to their students about what the calm corner is, talk to them about what's available for them there in the calm corner. Yeah. And so we gave each teacher that had a classroom, and actually even our PE teachers, our art room, we gave each one a bag. And this was very minimal, but we provided a coloring book, we provided a tactile item, we provided the scents, wax cubes for kind of the smell, and we provided a timer. And we put everything in this little bag, and we gave this to our staff. A piece of Velcro for the sensory piece. And again, you have a wide range of teachers, and we all talk about different personalities and things like this. Some of our teachers really took this and they ran with it, and they came up with some fabulous calm corners. Again, this is all we gave them, but this is pictures of some of our classrooms' calm corners that they created. And so again, when we're talking about kids that are having issues and things that they really don't need to be pulled out for, they started utilizing these calm corners. And so once it was explained, because of course, there are some kids that, maybe was throwing things around back there, but once the lessons were taught how to use it, this is what came out of it. And so it's just a couple of examples of some calm corners.
I found this to be really helpful in my individual sessions and even my small group sessions. I was able to go further in dialogue with them about, well, you were struggling with this, did you access a calm corner? And then have that deeper dialogue about, well, why didn't you, or why did you? And so just being able to have that conversation with parents as well about a tool and a strategy and things that we're trying to, have available to them to help them emotionally regulate has been huge.
And I will say too, with the lessons, kind of the intro lessons, the last one was sort of like, students go through like centers where they practice using some of the items, and they kind of talk about whether like it made them feel like more calm or if it kind of energized them. And so they were able to like kind of create their own like little toolbox, which is part of the zones. And part of it was also not just like the tangible type of items, but also practicing some of the mental strategies. So like the figure 8 breathing, the star breathing. And that was, we did some of that. I think that was an area where we saw we needed to kind of like expand further so kids understand like they don't need a physical something in order to regulate themselves, but that's kind of like further area for growth, I think, for us.
And again, with just the whole point of this being equipping the teachers, there are some things that you can do in the classroom, and they found that using these things made it easier for them to teach, made it easier for them to not maybe focus and concentrate on one student, and they could say, hey, go to the calm corner and continue teaching their lessons.
So, and I don't know if we mentioned this when we did the PD in August, we were excited that we got time to do the professional development, but we learned we got like the worst time slot ever. It was like the last like hour or two before like of the 2 days. So before they were break for lunch and go work in their rooms, they got to meet the teacher that night. Like it was just, they were so checked out, like they were not in a good zone, like when we were talking to them. So we forgot that we're gonna push for a better time slot next year because this is really important. But despite that, I think we had pretty good buy-in. I think many teachers knew our kids need more than what we're giving them, and so many were open to take it on. So part of that was once the lessons were taught, we wanted to really know that the students, they got the information that we wanted the teachers to teach them. So we did sort of a student random sample survey, just pulling a couple of kids out of each classroom and just asking them what they learned about the zones. This was probably 10 or so weeks into the school year, so they had all learned the zones. It had been probably even a few weeks since they had wrapped up. But this was literally, it was a Google form. We all did it in a few different ways, but we just split up the classrooms in our school in even 3 amounts. And then I had I put the link on my phone and I just went through and just talked to the student and asked them the questions, put it in, and then in the end we had some information. So we'll share that with you. So the screenshot's just what the survey actually looked like when we gave it, and then I'll show you the results. So we tried to target as much as possible, a representative sample. I think I went a little too far with that, of looking at demographics and special ed versus whatever. And then I was I just did way too much with that, but that's okay. So it was a pretty good representative sample of our students.
And going back to strengths, this is our data person. So that was awesome.
Which I would never describe myself that way, but that's okay. I appreciate it. So we kind of just put through to make sure we got every homeroom in the school, and so it was just an option to select the teacher that we were pulling a student from. And so then we just asked the student, can you tell us the zones? And so if they could name all of them, we entered it. If there was none, and then if some, we kind of chose the middle there. So the blue represents students who could name all 4. Really good results there. Then we've kind of focused on the yellow and the blue zone. We, for the most part, even just working in kids in my office, kids are really good at identifying what the green zone is, and they know what the red zone is, but they're not able to understand the complexities of the others. So that's where we kind of focused our questions. Could they name 2 of the yellow zone feelings? Could they name 2 feelings that go in the blue zone? And then the strategies for those. So a little bit more of a mix there, but still pretty decent. And that was with the blue zone. So the yellow zone, that was something we kind of noted as well, was the yellow zone is just more complicated to understand, and so we might need to do more teaching around that, and kind of because that's sort of the area where they can kind of really understand what's going on in their body and be able to regulate and catch it, versus if they're all the way in the red zone, it's sort of just weeding it out and trying again, I guess. And then with the yellows and strategies. So they had the strategies pretty well down. It was just understanding kind of the difference when you go from green to red and that there is an actual in between. And then with the blue zone strategies, again, they were pretty good at identifying those. And then we asked them if they could identify the location of the calm corner in their homeroom teacher's classroom. Again, just trying to like make sure kids knew what that was, they knew where it was and how to access it. And then, you know, if they said they felt like learning about the zones helped them in some way. So again, pretty good with the strategies. Most overwhelmingly, you know, many kids could tell us where the calm corner was. And then most students at that point agreed, yes, it was helpful. There was a little, with our survey, I think there was another option. And so I think that was a little confusing when we were adding things, but for the most, that's where like you see a lot of different colors, but it was just because of that. And then we had, you know, an option, you know, just ask the students to kind of make a comment, and we just typed it in exactly what they said. There was a lot of really fun, honest comments from middle schoolers. So we shared a few, you know, some said I like it. You know, good to know they didn't know SAD was in a zone. And so one, you know, some said sometimes the calm corner is annoying because people use it wrong. And then they get talked to about it, and it's annoying to learn about the zones because I can control myself. But now, you know, they can see that others need it. So a little bit of perspective taking, even though it's super useful to them. And then this was kind of a fun one. You know, the students said they haven't been getting insights, and they actually used the crazy eight breathing. I think it was actually supposed to be lazy eight, but that's okay. Yes, they felt crazy. And then the students said, you know, they noticed one of their students go into the calm corner, they come out, they're less angry or frustrated, which is kind of a cool take on it. So, and I think there was one, I didn't put it up there, but the student, this was one of my students, of course, and he's like, I just like to go to your office and talk to you and use your stuff. So like, and I was like, that totally works because that's what it's there for. So yeah. All right, so here's where we talk about our screener. And this was at the bottom, it's from this Michigan, if you search Universal Screener Michigan or SRSS Michigan, you'll find it, but I think we can probably link those resources somewhere and share them. But it's the student risk screening scale, and they have both externalizing and internalizing screeners. We chose to just go with the internalizing because we have a very good system for identifying our externalizing students, almost too good. So we know who those kids are, and we have supports in place. But we were really missing the students who were kind of like the silent sufferers. So that's what we chose to use. It is administered 3 times a year. Similar in our district, we use MAP assessment for academic progress monitoring. And so this is administered in about the same times. And we completed it at team meetings with teachers. They would complete the screening on their homeroom, and it was free and simple to use. So that's why we chose this. Our district has been talking about kind of adopting a universal screener, but like we were wanting it, and it was sort of slow, so we're just gonna go for it. We had the support from our building administration, so we went for it. So here's kind of what it looked like when we gave it to our teachers. We created this Google Sheets form. So one page was the instructions. I know you can't read that, but that's all it is. It's just the instructions of when they would complete it, how long it should take them, and what they should do. And also the counselors went to the team meetings and helped walk them through it and answered any questions, especially the first time they were doing it, in case there were any hiccups along the way. So this is kind of how it looked. They would have their class roster on the left, and then over the top there was like 7 categories to rate the students. They're internalizing characteristics. So like withdrawn, or they're bullied, or nervous and fearful. There was the low academic achievement, and they would just rate those based on either a 0, the student never exhibits that, or a 3, they frequently exhibit those characteristics. And do you want to say anything else about how you guys did that in the teams?
Well, I was gonna say, we were already scheduled, like every Monday was our student concern day. We kind of talked about those meetings yesterday and how sometimes they're great and sometimes they're not so great. But since we already had that time built in to meet with teachers, we decided to go in and do the survey on one of those days. And just some of the feedback that we got right away, I mean, that first one, they didn't know the students very well at that point. But each teacher, these are homeroom teachers, and so throughout those relationships, the advisory classes, those are the teachers that are getting to know those kids the best. And so that's who they did the screener on, their homeroom class.
Okay, so once the teachers filled it out, it kind of auto-totaled to the right, so you see where that says total and it's 0. Once they put numbers in, there would be a number there that added up all those columns. I couldn't figure out how to do that, but we found someone who knew how to do that, and it made it a lot easier for us. So once they filled out their whole class, we were able to kind of sort them and, according to the scoring that was on the website, and it basically went from anyone with a 0 to 3 was in the low risk range, anyone from 4 to 8 was in the moderate risk, and then anyone with a score of 9 or higher was in the high risk range. So we sorted it and kind of color coded it based on like just the colors that go with the triangle, with all of that made sense to us. So that's how we sorted the information, and then we looked at it and interpreted it as like a social emotional support team. And then do you guys want to talk about how you used that information to put students in groups?
So I had mentioned earlier that we had started our, we started groups based on the needs assessments. And so we did our typical groups, anger management, bullying, things like that. And so if a student was already in a group, we left them there. But if they were not, or if they had not already kind of self-selected through the needs assessment, then we would try to see if they were, first of all, in that red zone and make sure that we got them in a group or started with a group. And then we went from the red to kind of the yellow or orange and tried to service those kids next.
Yes. Yeah. So we did the fall administration, like it was October, I don't know the exact dates. And then I think we were due to do it again sometime in January. And so then I think that was around the time where we had a phone call with Midwest, like a PLC kind of check-in phone call, and we were talking about like looking at our results. And so we kind of organized our results based on like whole class and whole school, and we're like, okay, we have more than a lot more kids being identified as needy and risk, which we knew, but we're like, we have to kind of change the way we're thinking about it and pulling them into groups because we're never going to get to them all. And even, I don't know if you guys said, like the students that were invited to join, not all of them actually like brought back their permissions or wanted to do it.
Right. And that was a huge thing, and I don't know, I'm sure it's not a specific to Freeport problem, but even once we identified some of those students, we needed those permission slips in order to get them into groups, and we had a hard time getting those back. And so we really had to start thinking, how do we service these students? And of course, we knew those classrooms. We knew the classes that they were in and the teachers that they had, and so we knew that those were places in the building that were really, really struggling.
So I'm trying to think of the way we kind of organized the results here was the green would be a classroom that had 80% of their more of their students scoring in the low risk range. And so we're like, okay, they're getting what they need, they're doing pretty well. And with fifth grade especially, we noticed there was a trend for the positive. A lot of the teachers commented too, now they knew kind of where their kids were at. They felt like they knew them better during the second time around, and probably when we do the spring administration, we'll be interested to see the results, but they definitely know their kids now. And then the red would be students that 50% or less of the class were in low risk. So those were like the really high needs, and then the orange would just be the in between. So that was where we kind of went next for how do we focus as a whole, supporting the whole class as well as the teacher, because they were obviously being affected, and the self-care that they need as well. So this is where we get to where we kind of thought about where do we go next and how do we kind of provide the support in the whole class.
It felt validating to hear from PBIS and Michael that, yeah, you can't do groups for that large of, you've got three classrooms in fifth grade, and I think we have 4 in sixth. And so we're like, oh yeah, you're right. So pushing, yeah, okay, how are we gonna make that happen? How are we gonna fit that in? And what are we gonna use? And so Maria had been exposed and had been trained in Calm Classroom. And so she did some research for us, and the three of us then signed up and did the 2-hour webinar to get trained in it. And so then we started doing the push-in into the classrooms. When we went to talk to the teachers, we were of course nervous because every new thing you bring, right, the teacher's reaction is, or you fear, another thing you want me to do, and I can't even do what I'm supposed to do now. And so, but we were actually really happy. They were excited because they know there's a need. Like, they're struggling day in, day out. They're exhausted when they go home. And so they were happy that not only were we bringing them a solution, but we were going to come in and model it and help. And so we pushed in on Mondays for advisory. We would intro the 3 strategies. They committed to doing at least 3 times a day. They're filling out, feedback, and it's been a challenge, but it's going well. And I'm only there on Mondays, but they're there 5 days a week when we have 5 days of school, and they're doing it, and they're feeling good about it. They're seeing a change. I'm starting to have dialogue in groups in my office where kids are liking it and they're wanting it, and they can identify, well, I really like the music scribble, or I really like the bell one, or they're identifying strategies they like, which is our whole goal, is for them to have strategies in their toolbox to use.
And that was part of the feedback. I mean, we kind of created that, like I kind of created that just to help the teacher remember, this was part of their thing for the week. And then at the end, you can't see it on the image, but it was just, did the students like it or not? And then I kind of had this like aha moment where I'm like, well, why don't we change that? We should change it to be like, did it help energize them, or did it feel like they calmed down? Because one of the teachers who I went into, she was saying the kids really love the music scribble and like the energy hands, but it like amps them up. And I was like, well, that's actually good, because if you had a whole class of Blue Zone students, like you could use that. But like helping the students understand that versus them thinking it's just fun and they just want to do it all the time, like understanding what it does to their body and using that to benefit them.
And then of course there's the challenge, the whole reason that we're there. The music scribble starts out slow, but of course we had 1 or 2 students who started out by scribbling really hard and fast, and so that was distracting to other students. And so teaching and the expectations and redirecting within the presenting of the whole goal of Calm Classroom has been a little bit of a challenge, but we're getting through it 1 step at a time. So our lessons learned, obviously we've been talking about needing something for 2 years, but like everyone, the thing we always say is we need time, we need time, we need time. We don't have time, you have to plan it, you have to create what you're going to use, you need the PD, you need time for PD. And so just being here last year and having our admin come and commit to it, we were able to finally, create and implement what we've been wanting to do for a couple of years. So that was awesome. And then just, like I said earlier, having the tools in the classroom to emotionally regulate. We have 600 kids. And as a 5th grade counselor, I have 300, and Maria has 25 5th graders on her caseloads. The rest are mine, technically, and I can't give all of them a break at the same time. And so we need help here. We need to even this out. And so just teaching the emotional regulation and having that opportunity in the classroom. And yeah, we still have kids who need breaks in our room, but just getting those responsive services down so we feel like we can manage it. So of course the roadblocks are the usual roadblocks. It's one more thing. The teachers are overwhelmed. The curriculum that they keep getting loaded on doesn't even fit into the day. But just teaching that message that we can't afford not to. You're not getting through your curriculum because of these behaviors, because of these needs. These students need to have their needs met before they're going to learn anyway. And just getting everyone to see that, you were hired to teach the child, not just math. And so that's one of the roadblocks that we always hit. It is one more thing, but trying to show them how it's integrated, and once you do this, you will get more done with the curriculum because their needs are met, because they know how to emotionally regulate. They have access to a tool when they aren't emotionally regulated. Like I said earlier, our district is having conversations about aligning district-wide. It's not moving fast enough, but it is happening, so that we're thankful for that. We are part of those conversations. We definitely intend to keep the zones school-wide. We definitely intend to keep Calm Corner school-wide. And then we're piloting the Calm Classroom. We're not sure if that's going to be our tool. We want to get the feedback from the students, which we told them, you're going to decide what we're going to use. Your input is important. Do we use this for both grade levels? Do we just use this for 5th grade? All of those kinds of conversations. Or should we be using something else? Should we be using mindfulness or MindYeti or Go Noodle or what? there's lots of things out there, but what's best to use? But we know we need something, and the screener just made it even louder that not only do we need something, but we can't even service all of this in small groups. We have to think bigger and do some pushing too, so. And I think the screen really just, it's what this whole conference is about, you know, we're there to help, we're there to teach, we're there to support, but we can't do it all. And so we want to be the experts, we want to teach, we want to lead, but we can't be the responsive services in crisis all day long and get anything else done. And then, of course, the thing that we're not always very good about is the self-care. And so we spend time talking about what are we going to do for self-care, and then kind of the conversation from yesterday at the conference about how can we take that piece back. That's not something we've really done with the staff. We're still struggling with it for ourselves. We're making some progress for ourselves, but definitely need to make a plan to do something with that for staff as well.
And I know we had listed just really quick, just some of the self-care things. It is really, really important. Like for instance, my self-care is I detach. When I'm done with work, I do not have emails coming to my phone. I won't check, but that's my version of self-care. So I think it's really important for us to find things that work for us and things that we're doing to take care of ourselves,
So we want to take some time, both online. We have 6 people following us just all over, including some from Oregon, hello Oregon, who's there, as well as our 2 sites in Springfield and Carbondale. What questions do you, a lot of the questions on the Facebook Live, Ellie, were answered by the presentation, but what questions does this room have? Yes.
How do you incorporate calm corners in like the lunchroom or playground, other spaces beyond like our use of PE?
Just repeat the question in mic so people.
Yeah, so the question is about calm classroom implementation.
No,
I'm sorry.
the calm
Corner, excuse me.
Implementation and in other spaces other than the classroom.
Non-classroom space implementation of calm corners, if it's happening.
I would just say that's kind of been a learning curve, like to address even like PE, like the gym, like that's an area that just lacks. And so, I mean, I don't know if someone else has ideas of a teacher who took that on in a positive way, but we noticed those as being hotspots where students needed it, but they weren't getting it. So I don't know that we have an answer for that other than
We don't have it in the lunchroom or recess. We did struggle with PE, and we ended up having a meeting with our admin and PE and us because they weren't doing it, and it was a school expectation and you are a classroom. And we're doing a lot of mediation from PE afterwards, a lot of time spent there. So we need you to have this available during PE because there's some struggles there. And so we did use the admin to support us to get those in place. And so I do think after that meeting, a couple of them did it. There are 4 PE teachers total. We have some room for growth there as well.
Good reframe, room for growth. Other, yes.
Okay, I love your zones of regulation school-wide lessons, and I apologize if you already said this, but so did you all just do like 6 lessons at the beginning of the year, and then do you continue to put, I don't know how that looks for you guys, but like do you push into the classrooms year round, or I know you did like the check-ins with the students on how it was going, but how did you continue to, I guess, teach that or make sure that teachers were continuing to use it?
So before you, just to restate it for the folks on, describe the implementation of the zones as a school-wide intervention and how you kept it going and what it looked like.
So it was definitely on our list for PD to come back possibly in January and just do a refresher with the staff and maybe have the staff refresh with the students. With the year that we've been in, it did not happen, and so that's definitely back on our list for next year to kind of do a refresher. I think the biggest thing though was the language, and so when the kids are in our offices or even talking with parents, we're using that language, and so once it was taught, we were able to at least continue using the language.
And I will say, just to add to that, like, yes, but it's been kind of cool, even like recently, even though there haven't been, you know, we haven't asked them to do lessons, like students are still using that language. And I had a student just before break who talked about being in a purple zone. And it was like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me about that. But it was like, she had come to report a concern about a friend who had been harmed and she was like, I'm mad, I'm sad for what my friend went through, but I'm also mad at the person that hurt her. So I'm like, that is, like in my mind, I'm like, that's so cool. But yeah, so just like the kids are really taking it on. I heard the orange zone, so like the language, just that's been a huge asset to then the students that I work with, like in social work, like they're hearing that in the classroom. So very cool progress there.
Yeah, I'm hearing lots of, when we talked about the macro, micro, which we'll do when we come out of break, there's a lot of just the macro stuff of implementing at a school level, but then the kids using it, applying it, and really generalizing, right? All right, we got time for 2 more questions, I think, and then we're gonna take a break. Yes, sir.
At the beginning, did you have any teachers struggle with using your calm corner as more of a punitive place?
Yeah, calm corner is punishment, or the dunce cap kind of phenomenon.
Yeah, when we did the PD, we were reiterated repeatedly, you are not allowed to say, go to the calm corner now. Like, that's not it. The calm corner is an option and a child chooses to take themselves there. Because we also do recoveries in other classrooms. So if the teacher was wanting the child to be removed because they needed a break or the child needed a break but the child wasn't seeing it, they needed to use recovery and the whole restorative piece versus so we taught and repeated over and over, we don't send children. We can happily suggest, do you think the calm corner might help? Or something like that, but demanding a child and barking at them to go was not an option.
Have you ever gone into a classroom and found the teacher
Yes, and they have self-reported that because we set it up with a 5-minute, we set the timer for 5 minutes or less, and so the teachers have used it for 10 minutes. So.
And they have bagels there in case you're wondering. One more question from the floor, and then I have a last question.
We have centralized questions.
Oh, Central, please.
They just were asking, can you talk more about how you screen for students with externalizing behavior? I think you use your screener, but maybe if there's anything else you can say about it.
Screening for externals.
Basically our tiers, and so through the PBIS process and MTSS, a certain amount of referrals, they would go into check in, check out, the SAIG group, and so we would capture those students there, the externalizing behaviors.
So my last, I'm sorry, you're gonna say.
I was just going to say that process is taught at the beginning of the year through PD with the PBIS processes, and they get the flow charts that show the processes of how you get into each tier and what needs to happen.
Does our data person want to answer as well? So my question is for the 3 of you, and we're going to give you a big round of applause in that because that was just fabulous, and it's made my whole semester. I don't know about all of you. But what I'm wondering about, this whole group and the folks in the other 2 sites are going to get together probably a little bit before lunch, but definitely after lunch in work groups. And it sounds like that was a productive space for you all last year. Could you speak a little bit to what advice you might give them about how to make, it's going to be an hour or hour and a half, whatever we want it winds up being, how to make the most of that today?
I think one of the biggest things for us is the standard operating procedures, having those, that you have that agreement between you and your administration, and then you give it to the staff so everybody's on the same page. We created one for the radio so that we had permission to say, no, I'm in the middle of a group and I'm not coming. Or I'm not even going to answer because I'm now off the radio for, I'm off the radio for the next 45 minutes, I'm in group. I'm off the radio for the next 45 minutes, I'm in the classroom. Of course, that's different if all 3 of us are gone and it's crisis. But if all 3 of us are there, we just tried to, just getting that commitment and getting it in writing and then communicating it to everyone so you're on the same page is huge. And having the time, which is what we always need to do it, which we have here.
So I know Allie has a few things she wants to offer. Do you want to say that before we close out? Do you want to do that? Okay, yeah. So why don't we do what I really want to do, which is thank you all for this amazing And as much as they obviously made the most last year with the admin team being here with them, you are not with admin this year, right? So I would say if you have, as you work together, if you have questions or startup stuff, would you all be willing to kind of weigh in and give some thoughts on that? So please think about that. And now I'll give you to Allie and we'll move on. Thank you again very much, guys.
Great. Just want to say a quick thanks to everyone for being here in all of our different locations. We continue to be focused very much on harnessing this relationship between administrators and clinicians and figuring out all we can do to best help support. So these days, it's our 3rd year doing this. These days have been tremendous for us, but more importantly for the folks at the different locations. So please continue to talk with others about the importance of harnessing this relationship to be able to build the capacity of the rest of your staff to do this great work. We hope to offer this again next year. We want clinicians to continue to push forward, continue to push the great work forward. The fact that this work came out of these 2 days of being together last year is just a testimony to the work, to all that you all are doing, and we will continue to try to help facilitate this in the best way that we can. So thanks for being here today. Thanks to our colleagues across the state, and we look forward to many more years of working to build capacity of everybody to help support our kids. So thank you all so much. We're glad technology played nice today, and we'll have a great rest of the afternoon at our 3 different locations. So thanks so much.
So we will take a 10-minute break now, just to kind of let this sink in. You all can stay for just a second. We'll be back at 11:10. So thanks again. All right.